That was crazy. I mean, visibility was like from here to that gentleman right there.
I know, I came in from Howard County, and it was like, as soon as I got in the car to come.
Same here.
It was like.
As soon as I left Annapolis, it was like, boom, there you go, enjoy that.
Southern Maryland, it was
Okay, yeah, so I guess it was like cutting southwest to northeast, what they were saying, so I cut like right across.
How long is it supposed to last? Anybody know?
They said it's gonna, I think there's gonna be a break right around 7 or something like that tonight. And it's gonna, I don't know, maybe opposite, maybe it's gonna be, start up again at 7 tonight, but I think it's supposed to be better tomorrow. So, anyway, sorry about that.
All right. Welcome everybody, welcome to SkySlope training. Today we have our representative, Chris, who's flown out here from California to give you guys first-hand teachings on how all this works. So basically what we're going to do is he's just going to go through and explain everything to you. But if you have any questions at any point, feel free to raise your hand and ask away. Now, I'm Mike Taylor. Right? Hey, Chris?
All right, thanks, Mike. Hello, everybody. My name is Chris. Can everyone hear me okay in the back? Back there okay? Because they did give me this microphone. But this is, oh no, they turned it off. Did they turn it off? Oh man, it was on earlier. You know, I was singing the Frasier theme song earlier. We were having, you know what I'm talking about? Toss out and scrambled eggs? No? Anyway, it was one of my favorite shows as a kid. So here we are. All right, welcome to SkySlope training. My name is Chris, as I mentioned. I came out here from Sacramento to train all of you as your account manager here. So that basically means my job is to keep you all happy, keep you informed, make sure you're knowledgeable about the platform, you're using it correctly, all that fun stuff. So we'll basically be going through the entire file creator portion of the SkySlope platform, introducing you namely to how to get your property files into the system, how to get your forms, how to get them filled out, how to get them in front of your clients to sign them, how to split them apart and get them into our files so that your file reviewers can review them, so they can close their files, and so that you can get paid. Okay? So a lot of you have had some familiarity, I think, with other systems in the past. How many have already gotten into SkySlope already, or logged in at least? Awesome. Okay, so a good number of you, that's great. So a lot of you will have seen at least some of the things that I'm going to show you today. But if you have questions about it, especially about real world practical kind of issues you run into, that's what I'm here for. Okay. So just to introduce myself a little bit, I'm Chris Carassi. That's me with even less hair than I have now. Some fun facts about me. I grew up in a real estate family, so my dad was a broker and a licensed agent. You may have some bad visibility, and so I'm trying to leave you back here. I know, it's not a good spot. She moved out of there, actually, and I apologize. We had to kind of do this to get everything going here. My mom was a TC and an agent too, so I know your pains, your struggles and your challenges, and some of the benefits of being in real estate too. In my spare time, I like to program and do techie, nerdy things. And this is actually my first time in Maryland. I've been to DC before, but never actually got to tour around the state. I've been now to Landover, where we were last night doing some of the trainings. I went out to College Park to kind of check that area out. I was in Annapolis today. All really cool. Love it out here. I could definitely live here, except for the rain. That part is kind of killing me. Hasn't rained in like 20 years in Sacramento, so we're not really used to it.
You need it.
I guess I'm in the right place to make that move, aren't I? I love that hustle too. So let me talk to you a little bit about something before we even get into the platform that I hope you all feel really confident in, that I think sets us apart from, not just any other real estate company, but a technology company in general, and it's our support. I know everyone says that they have really good support, but I think we really do put our money where our mouth is here. Our support team is located in our Sacramento office, so they're not like in Bangladesh or some random part of the world, they're here. They are awesome, they're knowledgeable about the platform. I can get up and go walk over to them and triage any issues that come up. They're available 24/7, 364. So actually there's one day where they're not available. That day's already passed this year, so you're good. But other than that day, they are available 24/7. That's nights, weekends, holidays. If you're trying to get a contract signed at Sunday at 1 in the morning, there's going to be someone at SkySlope available to help you do that. Okay? In addition to that, you can contact them one of 3 ways. I guess the 4th way would be to show up at our office in Sacramento if you're really upset, but one of 3 ways here would be first calling. If you do call, they're going to answer on the 2nd ring. If you chat them, they're going to respond to that chat message within 10 seconds. And if you email them, they're going to respond to that email within 20 minutes. If for any reason that does not happen, you will get a $5 Starbucks gift card on us. Okay? So, not a huge thing, but a token of our commitment to make sure you understand we're here for you. Yes?
Chris, what is that phone number that they'll pick it up on the 2nd ring?
Great question. I will pull that up for you at the end of the session. I don't have it handy, but it's in my signature, so I can pull it up for you. It's not on the website, because we want you to try to chat in. I know people want to call, but it's just a little bit easier for us to triage it if you chat in, but we will make sure you have it.
It's on our company website too, on the SkySlope info tab right at the very top.
The call number, okay.
But I'll show you how to get in there and start the chat process and everything else
Let's
too
start
once we
the
jump
chat
in.
process.
But that's a good question. All right, a little bit about SkySlope. We won't go too much into this, but basically SkySlope is a lot like other transaction management platforms out there. I think the big difference, I would say, is that the history, how it was created, I think is very personal to your life and to your workflows. Our founder and CEO, Tyler Smith, was himself a real estate agent out in Sacramento. He was selling about 400 homes a year, I think at his peak. So very successful, just hated the managing this process, right? Loved working in real estate, loved working with clients, could not stand the paperwork, could not stand trying to get all these different systems to talk to each other. So he said, you know what, I'm just gonna build my own platform, all right? And I'm gonna call it SkySlope because he just picked a random name, I think out of a book or something. But here it is. It's gonna be a platform that really from listing to contract to close is gonna carry you all the way through. It's gonna have your forms from Zip Forms, it's gonna have your internal forms in there, it's gonna have a signing tool that's gonna allow you to get all that stuff signed. And we're going to go through everything today. So how to create your first listing, how to get that into a transaction, how to get your forms together. We're going to show you how to get them signed, how to get them back in the property. Okay, so if you have questions that are anticipating some of those things, know that we're going to get there. But I want this to be fun, I want it to be interactive, so don't be shy. Cool. So with that, we'll go ahead and jump out of there and jump into the system itself. Again, if you haven't jumped on the Wi-Fi, feel free to do that using this information here. However, you don't need to be on your computer. So if you try to follow along and you're not as familiar with SkySlope, you might fall behind. So I recommend trying just to soak it in, pay attention, take notes, ask good questions. And everything that we're doing today, you can practice as soon as you get home. Okay? All right, so I'm gonna go in here and make this as big as I can. If you're having trouble seeing it, I'll try to describe what I'm kind of saying, but you might want to also move up if it's a little too difficult for you to see that. Do you have a question?
What was the password?
Yeah, let me try to pull that up for you real quick again. So it's champions with a capital C, 1691. I don't know why it's 1691. Maybe somebody was a 17th century historian. Here we are. All right, so if you haven't gotten this down, ask your neighbor. I'm gonna go ahead and jump in now. All right. So welcome to SkySlope. This will be essentially what you see when you log in if you haven't already. You got the Tailored Properties logo in the top left. You got a bunch of numbers running across the top here. These are going to give you kind of an at a glance sense of where your account is, how many listings you have. We call those active listings. How many transactions you have. That's deals under contract. We call those pending transactions. What files you have closing this month, etc. Right? You're going to see that all at a glance. We're going to run through pretty much all the buttons you see down here. I want to call your attention to this important one though in the top right, which I'm kind of highlighting there. It's the support icon. If you're ever in here and you get into trouble, forget how to create a listing, you forget how to get something signed, whatever, no problem. Click on this, it will take you into a new tab, and we'll take you to the screen here where you can click on this nice big blue button and put in your email and either start a chat or shoot an email off to our support team. Make sure you get the phone number as well, so you can just pick up the phone and call. Again, those guarantees are in place, and if for some reason we don't need them, we're going to hook you up. I recommend bookmarking this page for sure. I also recommend checking out and bookmarking these tutorials down here. So this is a link to what I would call the library of SkySlope, right? It has everything you could possibly want to do in the system, detailed, documented, everything here. Everything from how to create a listing, how to convert that listing, how to use Zip Forms, which we'll show you today. So even if you just didn't take any notes, just kind of watched and glazed your eyes over, you could jump into here later tonight and learn everything you need to know about the system. I'd recommend you just pay attention now. So definitely bookmark that, okay? Cool. So let me actually jump back over here. So the first thing we want to kind of do now that we're in SkySlope is start to think about just the basic file creation process, right? Because the first thing we kind of need to do is get our paperwork requirements together for any listing that we have. And so we're going to walk through the process of creating our initial listing. We're going to talk to you about how to get a hold of those paperwork requirements, that checklist that you need, and how to actually go and source those documents, okay? So follow along. We're going to jump in here and create our very first listing, which, as you might imagine, I will do by clicking on the Create Listing button. Okay? So when I do that, I'm going to be greeted by my wonderful assistant, Sky. So she is all of your listing assistants as well. Eventually, she's going to come over to the transaction side too. So when you're entering in your pending deals, she'll walk you through that process as well. But for now, she's just on the listing side. Okay? The process of creating any listing pretty much begins by just entering the address of your property. So you'll go ahead and start typing that in here. And I've got let's see here, Prime Lane, that's a Hyattsville, perfect. So I'll go ahead and pull that property up, and you can see as I'm typing that we're pulling in data from Google Maps, so I don't have to even complete the whole address. I just click on that, and it's all pretty much confirmed for me, okay? If I'm ever trying to enter in an address that Google Maps, can't find, maybe it's new construction, maybe it's some random like ranch, or farm or something that you're selling, you can go ahead and switch to manual entry and then put in whatever you need to put in, okay? So just keep that in mind. Otherwise, we're going to click on Let's Go. Now, for a lot of you, if your process doesn't require you to put in your listing into the MLS prior to going into SkySlope, you won't see the screen, and that's not a big deal, okay? That's not really going to change very much for you. If your listing happens to be in the MLS already, we might be able to find that listing for you and pull in some of the information that's on that listing, such as the listing price and the listing date and things like that, okay? This doesn't really change the workflow very much. If you do happen to have it on there, great, you can say this is my listing. If it's not the one you're looking for, or if you don't have it on the MLS, you just won't even see this screen, okay? So go ahead and click on that, and now some of that data has been pulled in, but eventually Sky is going to ask you this question here. So she's going to say, what office should this listing be under? This is a really important question that she's going to ask you, because when we say office here, what we're really talking about is what region is this listing located in, okay? And by region we mean, Virginia, any one of these counties here in Maryland, and you can see that there's quite a few listed out here, and DC is included here as well, if you're associated with those regions, in the real world, right? So what you want to be able to see are all the different places you're licensed, coming up here. If you don't see the office or region that you need, you want to go ahead and contact Mike or the admins to make sure that gets added.
Are they in alphabetical order?
No.
Oh.
They're just
So Anne Arundel's in there somewhere, it's just not at the top of the list.
So it just depends on whatever's associated with your account. So it looks like this kind of test account that we have,
Okay.
or this test agent we have, isn't associated with Anne Arundel, but if you are, it'll appear.
Okay.
Everybody will have access to every single region.
Okay,
Oh,
there you
okay.
go. Cool. So this is just one that doesn't have it. So you'll see every single region there. You just choose the one that listing is in, because that's going to control which paperwork requirements come up. Because the paperwork requirements in Dorchester might differ from those in Baltimore City, etc. So that's kind of how you're narrowing that down. Does that make sense to everybody? I saw some confusion.
Yeah.
This is super important though, so I want to make sure everyone gets it. Awesome. So in this case, I'm going to come in here. What county are we in? Are we in
Anne Arundel.
Dang it, it's not. Whatever, we were in Prince George's last night, so I'll go ahead and select that. And then you come down here, and it's a long list, so go ahead and make sure you scroll all the way down and click on Next Question. Okay? The next thing she's going to ask you is, what type of listing is this? This is the second really important question she's going to ask you. What she's really saying is, okay, is this a lease? Is this an empty lot? Is this a commercial sale? And therefore, what kind of, what kind of checklist should I deliver to you for this listing, right? Because the paperwork requirements will differ for each one. So as long as I have the correct region and the correct type, then I'm going to be given the correct checklist on my listing or transaction, okay? That's why it's really important that you make sure you select those correctly. Otherwise, you'll end up with the incorrect checklist. You may not even realize that. You'll start uploading a bunch of stuff, and guess what? We actually have to remove everything to update the checklist. So you have to reattach everything after the fact. So save yourself the trouble and just make sure you're selecting this correctly.
How do you select and go back and get Anne Arundel County to that list?
So in this case, if you, for whatever reason, were looking at your account and you didn't see the correct office or region there, you would need to contact an administrator because they can add that to your account. But it sounds like Mike made sure that everybody has access to every single office. So in theory, that shouldn't be an issue. But if you do see that, let me know, or let them know. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and just choose residential for sale standard. That's what we're going to kind of hypothetically kind of go through today. And I'll click on next question. So this would be an example of that MLS data coming in. If you didn't have the MLS entry already there, the only difference is that this number is blank and you have to type it yourself. Okay? So not a big deal if it's not already on the MLS, you would just type it in yourself.
Can you skip that?
No, that is going to be a required bit of information. So everything she asks you, you have to supply. And if you don't have that information, kind of the approach that we're offering is just kind of do your best. Would there be a reason why you wouldn't know what the list price was at the time of listing?
Because I'm going to go out, I want to enter it to get the paperwork, but I don't have a listing yet because I'm going out on an appointment.
Okay, so we'll talk about how to handle that situation. So unless you have, what I would recommend anyway, unless you have a signed listing agreement or a signed contract, you don't want to be creating anything in SkySlope. We'll talk about different ways to handle that paperwork prior to going under those agreements or those transactions. But just because of the information you have to supply here, you'd end up supplying a lot of bad information, if that makes sense. So we'll talk about ways to handle that.
And you can, when the price gets reduced, you have to go back in here and change it.
And you can go ahead and update that, and if you have to collect paperwork on that, you can submit it.
Did you say when the price gets reduced?
Yeah.
Not if, but
Yeah.
likely. All right, so in this case though, we already have that information, so we'll go ahead and click on next. Now we're going to fill in the commission information again to kind of emphasize if this information changes later, if you don't know it, you can update it at a later time, okay? So you're just kind of doing your best to get this listing created so far. All right, so we got our listing date. We're going to go ahead and supply an expiration date as well. Arbitrarily, we're going to choose the end of the month. We'll go ahead and keep on going in here. So we're going to go ahead and say this property was built in 1945, because why not? And then we're going to describe who our seller is. Now I'm from California, so I work with a pretty high-class clientele. And my favorite seller is Mr. Bill Murray. And his email address is skyslopetraining@gmail.com, believe it or not. All right, so Bill's my seller. If I had an additional seller, let's say Martha, his wife, but probably not his actual wife, was also selling, I would come down here and just click that button right there, and then I can add in that information, okay? Any questions so far? We're almost done with creating our very first listing. So Sky's going to say, hey, does everything look right? You can confirm this information. If you miss something, you can go back using this arrow here. Otherwise, click the Create My Listing button, and we're good to go. So at this point, we're taken to the checklist, but I want to give you a quick tour of what this listing file is and what all these tabs up here are. So really, any listing file will have these 6 tabs that you see here at the top. The first one that I want to show you real quick is the listing tab itself. It's kind of like an info sheet for this property file. It's going to include all the information we supplied, plus some additional items that we may want to include. So if you do get the MLS number and want to throw that in there, you can. It's not required here though. Only the red starred items are required. Okay. So those are the ones you really need to worry about. The only thing on this page that you may want to come back and update, something like the list price, for example, or the commission information, but you may want to come in and add a co-listing agent. So how many people in here work with an assistant or on teams or anything like that? They got a couple. So for those of you that are doing something like that, if you want to give those people visibility into the property file you just created, you want to make sure you're coming in here and clicking on this co-listing agent area, clicking on the add button, searching for that person, so we can come in and find, maybe Mike Taylor or somebody else. So I'll go ahead and grab him. I click on Save Co-Agent. Now, when Mike logs in, he'll see the same listing, and he'll be able to get in there, update the documents, the information, do all the same things that I can do as the file creator. Yes.
Can you add more than one person?
You can add up to 5.
Okay.
So great question. So if you have a team of people that you're working with, commonly, go ahead and just type in their names, and they'll be good. They'll be good to go to get into that file. Okay. Questions about that? Yes, sir.
I know it's slightly different. Can you save the information without completing the whole screen?
No. So everything that has the red star here, if it's not filled in, you won't be able to progress kind of through this process.
So you can't temporarily save it, like if you get called away or anything like that. You've got to.
No, I mean in that case, no. Just because usually the process of setting up isn't that long, so we don't have like a save and walk away feature. It just kind of gets disrupted. Although sometimes you'll end up with files that we call incomplete, although the Sky process doesn't really allow for the creation of incomplete files. On the transaction side, you can still do that a little bit. I can show you what that looks like here.
Does this time out?
It does. So if you just let it sit there for I think 20 minutes, it'll log you out. If you just don't do anything, don't click anywhere. Or
Do you lose the data then?
Potentially, yes.
Oh, see, that's the difference. We do stuff like that.
True, but I mean, for the most part, your interactions will get saved here because as soon as you upload the document, it's there. Like you don't have to click save again or something like that. In some cases you will though, and I'll show you those cases here. So, for example, on the contacts tab, so it's another tab on this listing file. This will kind of house all the information for the sellers. On the transaction side, it will include your buyers and everybody else too. If you do need to make any updates to the information you supplied, you can come in and click on the edit button right here. Okay. I can come back in and maybe add in Bill's property information and stuff like that here, in which case if I didn't click the save button, I would lose that.
So can you toggle back and forth?
Between these different tabs?
Well, between different tabs, and sometimes I use multiple computers to do stuff.
Yeah, so it's all web-based, so as long as you have access to the internet, you can get on this from multiple devices or multiple tabs or what have you. So here we are, we can make an update if you want to, click on save, and that will, save that information into our own contact directory. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But any questions about the contacts area for now? Okay. The main thing you want to worry about again is just making sure that red starred, those items are in there. All right, let's go back to the fun part, which is the checklist. Okay, so this is going to be a really important part of any file you have, whether it be a listing or a transaction. And what you'll see here is that Some of these items that are listed out here are going to show up as required. They have like that red status of required there. Some are going to be if applicable. The red star items or the red required items are always required to be turned in. You always have to turn it in, okay? In some cases though, your file reviewer who has the ability to change those statuses may come in and make things not required that were, or vice versa. For example, like if you don't have, if this property is just not going to be listed on the MLS, you can come in here and you see these little comment boxes right here. This actually allows for a little bit of internal communication. So you can, for example, come in and say, not on MLS, click on the save button right here. Now the file reviewer, when they go in there, will see that and they can come in and just go ahead and make that not required for you. Okay? Questions about that? Cool. So there's a couple ways to kind of think about this checklist and actually get documents turned into it, right? So this is really just a list of placeholders, just empty shells, kind of just describing what it is you need to upload to that area, right? So there's kind of a very simple and straightforward way of getting a document uploaded into this checklist. Let's say you happen to have one of these documents on your hard drive, right? And so I might happen to have an MLS printout, just sitting on my hard drive somewhere. So if I do happen to have that, I can come in and click on this attach button. You can notice that's next to each one of these checklist items. If I click on the attach button right here, I'll be taken to the screen where I can click on the upload document button right there and go ahead and look for the files. If I come into my listing folder here, there's my MLS printout, okay, because maybe I saved it from the actual MLS, right? So now I'm going to click on Start Upload.
So you have to scan every page
No,
separately?
no, this is just one way to do it.
Okay.
So calm down. I'm going to show you how to do it the other way. But you may, in some cases, just happen to have that document on your hard drive, right? That's how you turn it in the most simplest way possible. Once it's actually turned in, you can go ahead and click on this paperclip icon to see what was there. So you can actually confirm that it was the correct document if you need to. That's exactly what your file reviewer will see too. So again, they're going to have that mutual visibility into what you've uploaded there. Everyone following along with that? That look pretty easy so far? Uploading the document? Cool. If you need to remove it, you can just by clicking on that X button. That does not delete the document. That still stays in SkySlope. You really can't delete anything that goes into SkySlope. But you can remove it from the checklist just in case you uploaded the wrong thing, right? Cool.
Question.
Yes?
What if you want to remove the whole contract?
If you want to remove the whole contract, then I'll show you later how you can cancel it.
Okay.
Yeah, great question. All right, so let's talk about a little bit of a different thing. We've created our first property file, right? We have our listing in there, and based on the region and the type of listing, we now know what our requirements are for paperwork. Now the rest of these requirements aren't on our hard drive, right? They are somewhere else. Maybe our client hasn't even seen the paperwork yet. Maybe they've seen it and they've signed it, and we need to find a way to get it in. Well, let me show you how you're actually going to approach this inside of SkySlope. Okay, because SkySlope allows for the acquisition of all the forms you need, as well as getting them signed by your client, all without really leaving our platform at all. Okay? So let's actually leave this property file entirely, but now that we have our list, we'll kind of keep that in mind, right? Let me come back out to the main page here, which I can always do by clicking on the logo in the top left. Yes, sir.
Rick, the email. There's an email for every listing. What's
Yes,
that for?
I will cover that one in a little bit. It's a property-specific email address that will let you forward stuff in, basically. So I'll actually show you how to do that in a little bit. So one thing I want you to kind of remember, right? So we came in here, we clicked on the Create Listing button. That's how we created our first property file. Anything, whenever you're looking for a document or a form or a disclosure that isn't already a part of a property file, there's one area I want you to remember to go look, okay? And that's called Working Documents. Okay, it's right down here in the bottom right. This is kind of your staging area, your working area for all the forms and stuff that you have that you need to get together, right, to make this listing happen. So let me come in here and show you what you got. So I'll actually skip over the personal docs and the office docs here for a second, and I want to jump straight into the Zip Forms Plus tab. So you have 3 tabs in the working docs area for you all, okay? Zip Forms is a very important tab though. So for all of you that have logged in already, I believe you should have gotten that little pop-up that says like, hey, log into your Zip Forms account. Are you guys familiar with that? If not, you can come up here and click on your name in the top right and go into My Account and set it up there. But the idea is that our integration with Zip Forms is a single sign-on, so you sign on one time and you should never have to do it again. Yes?
What if you don't use zip forms?
If you don't use Zip Forms, then you have some options of using it if you want to, or you can acquire these forms in another way,
Yeah.
however you would normally do it. We can
Yeah.
talk about some strategies offline too.
Okay.
No matter how you get a hold of the forms, there are ways, pretty easy ways to get those documents into SkySlope, which we'll show you. This is just another way to kind of get those items, get them filled out, and get them signed by the client in a really efficient way. It's not required though, at all, okay? question, yes.
At this point, though, everything that you've done so far is saved, right?
Correct. Everything I did on that listing is
So if you
saved.
go out of it, you can come back in and
Oh,
fill
yeah,
in
yeah.
gaps. Okay, so everything.
Yeah, our listing file is still there, so if I come back in and I were to open up, you know, our listings area, which I'll show you in a little bit, you'll see it there. We save everything. Like, once it's in SkySlope, it's there. You really can't lose it, even if you want to. Yes?
understanding we can get zip forms through our board?
Correct. Yeah, and so I think Mike will have some more information on that. I'm not as familiar with what the pricing and stuff is in terms of this area, but I know it's really common for that to be built into your fees, I believe.
Yeah, everybody gets appropriate your association.
Okay, cool.
This is all included on the SkySlope info tab on our company site too.
Okay.
And so I can't answer all of your questions about zip forms because I don't work for zip forms, but I can show you a little bit of how it will work here in SkySlope and introduce you to some of the benefits of using it this way, okay? All right, so let me kind of just start off by saying that this integration allows for the introduction of a subset of the functionality in zip forms. You're not going to get all of zip forms here, but you're going to get enough to kind of keep you dangerous. Namely, some of the things that you can do that will kind of keep you productive here is the ability to actually create a zip forms plus transaction from the screen. So I can come in, this is not the same thing as a SkySlope transaction, just want everyone to be clear on that. This is just you creating a zip forms transaction from here, so you don't actually have to log into zip forms to do that. You can name it whatever you want, right? Since we're working on that 1101 prime property, I'll go ahead and just use one that I've already created, kind of like those cooking shows, where they just pull it out of the oven. And if I want to add forms to this, right, I have the ability to come over here and click on the Add Form button. That will basically pull from every library you have in your existing zip forms account. You can see that this test account that we're in is associated with quite a few of your local boards right there. Choose the one that you're looking for or for the county that you're licensed in, and that will change the forms that appear here. Now the idea is you're going to take that checklist that you had in the listing, compare it to what you have here, and try to bring in those forms that you need. Okay, so your exclusive right to sell, all those kinds of things are going to be in here. A lot of the disclosures. Some of the internal ones are going to be in another location, which I'll show you in a minute. They're not in zip forms, but I think the vast majority of them are here. Okay, questions about this so far? Yes?
Is there a way by which you can simplify these forms together in such a way if I go in, I just get the forms instead of going here. I mean, that's kind of cumbersome.
So I think there's a way to do that in zip forms using their template feature. So that is not one of the features that we do support in this integration. So for example, let's say you created a zip forms transaction through our integration here, and you're thinking, I don't want to go and have to individually grab each of those forms. I know for this listing, there's a batch of forms I always use. I just want to grab them all at once, right? In that case, what I recommend you do is click on this Open in Zip Forms Plus button. That will open you, it'll take you into zip forms, log you in, and take you directly to this transaction that you're looking at here. Okay? So it's a little bit, I don't know if it'll actually work since we're in Mike's account. Let me pull this up a little.
Is there a difference between zip forms and zip forms plus?
Yes.
There is, and I'm not sure what it is, because I don't know much about zip forms. But I know that we integrate with zip forms plus, so that might be something to consider when you're signing up for an account. Just make sure that they're good on it.
With creating the zip forms file, can you print blank forms like you can in zip forms and without any information?
I'll show you in a minute how you can fill out all the forms and everything just like you can in zip forms through our site.
No, I mean, can you just do blank forms?
Yes, you absolutely can do that.
Okay.
They'll come in blank, and then you can fill them in if you want to. You don't have to. Now that we're here, though, right? So we can come in, and I always forget where this is. It's already here. If you have those templates available to you, and I know that she was asking about that, so if you click on the Apply Template and you have a template there, just go ahead and apply it. Those changes will show up on SkySlope. So if I went in and applied the template right now, and I came back over here and just hit refresh, I would see those changes applied there. So if you don't want to individually choose the forms, you don't have to. You can go in and apply the template. But either way, this integration is going to allow for you to have that visibility without even leaving, our platform at all. Once you have that, you can come in here. And once they're in here, whether they, no matter how they kind of got in, if you will, you can go ahead and open it up, and I'm hoping this is the right one. So just like you can in zip forms here, you can go ahead and pull up the form. So this is just like you see on the zip form side. This is the full-on, listing agreement here. I can come in here and make changes if I need to. So if I want to come in and update this address, I can come in and say 345, right? So that change has been updated there. I can come in here and maybe change that to Rob Taylor if I want to. And now when I click on Save right here, those changes will be saved. I could go home, log into my zip forms account, and see that change reflected on that form. Does everyone follow along with that so far?
Yeah, I
Yes.
want to back up a second.
Sure.
So when you're creating a transaction and you go in and it says these are the required forms,
Mhm.
and then you go back to the zip form icon, are you saying that it pulls in all the forms that you need right there?
No,
Okay.
no, it definitely does not. So
Okay.
what you can do is choose those forms that you need, or you can apply a template on the zip form side to bring them.
So it creates a checklist based on what criteria you've entered, and from that checklist, you then choose your forms.
Correct. So that'll give you, that's basically your guideline of where to go out and get those forms and just get them all together. Yes, sir.
So if you've already created forms in zip forms,
Mhm.
it'll pull those up.
Yeah, and I'll show you how to actually get them into the file right now. So if you've already gone in, you've created all the forms and everything like that, cool. And then you can just create your property file later and then just go ahead and bring them in. And I'll show you how to do that. So what I kind of showed you in terms of creating the property file first, that's helpful mostly if you aren't sure what the paperwork requirements are, right? If you don't know what every single disclosure you need for this county, maybe you go ahead and create that property file so you can see it. But if you've been selling in that county for 20 years and you know it like the back of your hand, just go ahead and go into zip forms and get it filled out.
Yeah, but it changes.
Any other questions about that so far? Cool. So I can go ahead and again, I can write up a whole contract, I can write up my listing agreement, I can write up my disclosures, whatever I need to do. And then I can come back in here and let's actually get these into the property file, okay? So we know, and I won't go through every single item we need because that was a long checklist, so I'm not gonna do that, but I can grab, I know that we'll need this exclusive right to sell. Looks like we can maybe grab, let's see what else, lockbox agreement. I don't know, let's go ahead and grab this one here too, okay? Let's say we had selected an entire bundle of disclosures and forms that we need, that we know we have on our checklist, okay? What we can do now is click on this assign button, and in addition to being able to fill out the form and everything like that, this is where this integration kind of shines. So I can click on this, and instead of having to download those zip forms or figure out some other kind of way to get them into SkySlope, I can just simply bring them into my listing directly. So here's a listing that I created down here, right? I can click on the assign button, and I'm basically going to make a copy of all those zip forms and put them into my Documents tab. And so we haven't even discussed the Documents tab on this listing file yet, but note that I have been redirected to that property file that I just created. The Documents tab is kind of a holding area for all the different documents, photos, whatever you want to upload into this property file, it'll hang out here, waiting to be assigned to the checklist, okay? Now we have 3 of the documents that we need. There's a couple of other ones that we need to get a hold of that weren't in zip forms. Either some internal in-house documents that are actually in a different area, which I'll show you right now. But any questions about how I got into zip forms, filled everything out, and got it assigned to the property file? I know you're probably thinking, how do we get those signed? But I will answer that question soon. Questions so far? Cool. All right, so I'm missing a couple forms, so let me go back out here to the main area again. And I'm going to come down to working documents, because that's where I'm going to go if I'm ever looking for a form or a disclosure that isn't already on a property file, right? And where I want to go now is Office Docs. Office Docs is another kind of repository for your forms and disclosures, separate from zip forms, and its main use is going to be to kind of house those admin fee documents, fraud warnings, some of the other things that just aren't in zip forms that are a part of your paperwork process. So all you got to do is come in here and grab any one of them, just like we showed you a second ago. So we're working with the seller rights, so we can go ahead and grab this acknowledgement of admin fee for the seller. Note that when I selected that, the assign and digissign option appeared there. So I can select more than one. I can come down here to fraud warning and grab that one. And then when I click assign, just like I did before, I can choose the property file I want to make copies of these forms to. I'm going to move them right in there. Okay? Questions about that? Yes.
So if you have to go get a particular form from a board, like in Southern Maryland, we use one to write the farm.
Mhm.
And it's hardly on anything but
Right.
but Southern Maryland stuff, and sometimes not even there. So you're saying we have to get those forms and scan them in and then add them to the program?
Are they not in zip forms?
No, that one's not.
So if they're not in zip forms and they're not going to be here, like for example in this area here, which I don't think that it is, then what I'd actually recommend is that you scan that in and put it into your personal docs area. So let me actually take just for a second comment on this personal docs area. So it's the third tab in this working documents kind of dashboard. So personal docs is unique to each and every one of you. You all have your own personal docs area. No one else has access to it but you. and you have unlimited file storage there. So it's kind of like your own personal Dropbox area, right? You can upload anything you want here, so including maybe a form like that only you're using in a rare kind of number of cases. You can go ahead and grab that and upload it from here. Anything you upload will be in this unfiled area, but you can come in, you can add folders. Those folders can have subfolders, so you can kind of create your own organizational structure here. And you can use this area to house that form, and if you want to, grab it whenever you need it. You'll see here that those options kind of pop up when that happens, and you can assign it to your property file whenever you happen to need the right to farm disclosure, or any other random disclosure that you might need for your own personal use that isn't in zip forms or isn't in office hours. Another way that you might utilize this would be for the other question that you had. So prior to getting someone under an agreement, right, you're going on an appointment with them, maybe you're just kind of getting following up on a lead. Prior to getting someone actually under contract, this is a good area to store some of that documents because of how easy it is just to assign stuff to the property files once it's in there. So for example, if I'm working with Bob Byer, and Bob's going around and he's making 10 offers, I don't want to create 10 property files in SkySlope because I'm going to have to cancel probably at least 9 of them, right, if not all 10. It's a lot of work. I don't want to have to do all that over and over again. What I'd rather do is create a little folder for Bob, and then maybe a folder for every property if I want to. I don't even have to do that. I can maybe just put in offers or something like that. And then every time he submits something, great, I go ahead and upload it here. Finally, one of them gets accepted, right? Hooray! Then I'm going to go in and I'm going to create my transaction file, which will show you how to do. I'll go ahead and then come back in here, grab the contract, whatever it might be, and just assign it. That way I don't have to redo that work over and over and over again. Yes?
So when you put a document into personal docs, let's say we're porting it over from somewhere else, we're going to port it over as a PDF.
Correct.
And will it auto-populate though?
No. So that's a limitation of this personal docs and office docs area, is that there's not really a way to fill out the form or have it be auto-populated like there is in zip forms, right? So in zip forms, you fill in the cover sheet, that information's going all over the place, and you can actually do the filling out through SkySlope. That's just a limitation we don't have.
Because that's an image file, then it would have to be handwritten.
Not necessarily, no. I mean, there's a concept of fillable forms, like even just fillable PDF forms, but they just aren't supported here in the office docs area or the personal docs area. Using our digital signature tool, though, you can actually effectively achieve that, and I'll show you how to do that when I send out my signing.
So could I port it in as an editable PDF?
Even if you do, there's no way to save it in the system. So for example, if I come into Office Docs here, and I have, I think actually you can fill one of these out. So I'm just opening up, right, this admin fee form that you all have.
Right.
I can fill this out, that's a heck of a fee. But there's no way to save this. This is just a PDF opened in my browser, right? So there's no save button or anything like that. So what I'll actually show you how to do is when you're sending this out to the client, or even if you're not sending it out to them, you can use DigiSign to save that change on there, which is our signature tool called DigiSign, and actually write it on there. Another way you can do this, if you want to, is to print this PDF, or print it as a PDF. So one trick that we've also seen work well is if you come in here and you fill this whole thing out, that's not how you spell it, whatever. Just go with it, guys. So say I fill out the whole thing, right, if I wanted to. I can actually come up here to the print icon. This should work on most browsers, not just Chrome. And then instead of printing to an actual printer, look for the Save as PDF option. This isn't a SkySlope thing, by the way. This is just a computer thing. But what that will actually do is save your changes to that form to your hard drive, and then you can just upload that wherever you want. Not super clean like it is in zip forms, but that's one way to do it. I'll show you another way how to do it, though. That's a little bit more efficient in terms of just your flow. But a great question. Any other question about personal docs, or how to handle it, or some use cases behind it? Yes?
Okay, you do a referral. And so you put that referral agreement in personal docs, and then, oh my, it comes through. So, but you don't have a transaction to put it with because it wasn't yours, so what do you do with it?
So for referrals, there is a way to enter them in and describe the transaction as having come from a referral, and then I'm assuming you can upload the agreement, but that might be a situation we can talk about maybe a little bit towards the end, just because it's one of those rare ones.
Okay.
It's one of those rare ones, but yeah.
Okay.
Referrals are all still uploaded on our company site. They're not uploaded on SkySlope.
Okay, that's a good idea.
Okay. Only on the company site. Okay.
So there's ways of putting them into SkySlope, but it's not very clean. So I was going to say, I didn't really want to take too much time showing you that part because it's not good practice. Yes?
So when you were working with Bob, the buyer, so let's just, so far we spoke about listing documents, but what if I'm just buying properties?
Yeah, so in that case, I would say have that folder for Bob, and keep your agency maybe on that top level area for him. Any offers he's submitting, whatever else you're collecting for that person, keep it there. Then create your transaction once the offer is accepted.
Okay.
Now, and that's really how, from a buyer standpoint, how you interact with SkySlope, because you don't even think about the listing side of things at all. You just go in, you create a transaction, put in that information, and we'll walk you through that. We want to just make sure you all understand that if you're on the listing side first, you create the listing, we're actually going to convert it into a transaction. Because transaction is kind of our umbrella term for under contract, right? About to get paid. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Cool. So let's actually go back to our listing file, because at this point we've gathered up all the paperwork. We went into zip forms, we got the stuff we needed from there. There's a couple items we needed from office stock, so we went in there, and basically all we did was select them and then assign it, right? So now that we've done that, let's come back out to the main page. And let's go ahead and jump into the manage listings area. So as you start to accumulate these listings, this is kind of a dashboard view of all the ones you have in your account. So you'll be able to see the address, is it active or expired, what the expiration date is, what the list price is, etc. So we can go ahead and jump into this Prime Lane property here. And I can come into the Documents tab just to confirm, yep, here's all the forms that we have added, right? So these have been assigned from zip forms and office numbers. All right, so we got them into the property file. Hooray, now what? Like, how do we actually get them signed? How do we get them into the checklist? So here's the fun part. Now we're going to gather up all these items here. So we're going to gather up our Acknowledgement of Admin Fee, our lockbox, our exclusive right to sell, and our fraud warning. We'll pretend like that's all we need for our purposes today, okay? But you'll probably have a big long list of things. What I want to do now that I've selected these items in my Documents tab, and note again that these are documents that have been uploaded to the file, but they're not really on the checklist yet. And if they're not on the checklist, your file reviewer can't see that. So it's really important that you don't just leave them here in the Documents tab and go, oh, my job is done, because they won't know what you've done at all. But what I want to do is come up here now that I've selected those items, and I want to click on the DigiSign button right here. Okay, so now we're actually going to walk you through how to send out your first DigiSign envelope, get all these disclosures and everything signed, and actually get this into the property file. So let's go ahead and initiate that process now. So the first thing it's going to do is kind of look through that Documents tab and allow me to confirm all the items I actually want to include in this envelope, and that's kind of our metaphorical term for what we're sending out here. And I'm actually doing this on my cell phone internet right now because I think the actual internet's a little janky, so if it looks a little slow, that's probably why. So these are all the items that I have in the Documents tab on the left-hand side. So I can grab more of them if I want to. If there's one on my hard drive that I just randomly didn't upload, I can go ahead and upload that here. But everything on the right-hand side is what's actually in my envelope, right? So if I had a manila envelope and I'm about to mail out to my client, whatever's over here is what I've actually put into it. I can choose the order of the items right there. I can also apply some templates to this. How many people have used a digital signing tool before? Familiar with the concepts? For those of you that haven't, the main goal is to take a PDF and add little boxes where your clients can click to replace their actual signature, right? That's all this is. These templates are basically predefined places where those clicks need to happen, right? So some of those templates have already been created for you, and I'll give you an example of how to choose them and actually apply them to the document. If we have time at the very end, I'll even show you how to create your own templates, but I can also share some tutorials and stuff like that with you. The advantage of using these templates is it just saves you time on the clicking and adding of those little squares, right? So if I come in here to the fraud warning, I click on Choose Template, so next to each one of those forms is a Choose Template button. Now I can look through and find the one that I'm looking for. So it looks like we have a fraud warning for sellers. It's an in-house doc template, so I'll click on Apply. When you do that, what happened? It disappeared, right? So it's just a funny little UI quirk. It's actually all the way at the top. It has that remove button there. So if you apply a template and it disappears from your list, it's just up there. It hasn't gone anywhere. So now I'm going to click on Done. And now it says Remove Template. So that's kind of my cue that I've applied a template to it. Same thing here with the Acknowledgement of Administrative Fee. I'll go ahead and click on that. And we'll come down and grab the appropriate one for the sellers. Go ahead and click Apply, and we're done. All right. I won't apply a template for the lockbox or the exclusive right to sell. I'll just show you how to actually add them in manually, those little clickable signature fields. But I also want to show you how the templates work too. Okay. So let me go ahead and click on Next now. Now we actually want to choose who's receiving this envelope. So we've chosen like what's going to be inside of the actual manila, folder, so to speak. Now we're going to choose who actually receives it. Some of this will be based on the information we have in our property file, right? One of the benefits of using something like DigiSign, because it's integrated in with all of SkySlope, is that if you send something out, you don't have to retype in someone's information and stuff, because we know who the seller is. You've already entered in their information once. Now the template that we applied to one of the forms includes room for 2 sellers here. And we'll talk a little bit more about templates later, like I said. You may not have 2 sellers, maybe you only have 1, in which case you just go ahead and remove that second one. This will pop up and be like, whoa, 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 you sure you want to do that? You say yes. And now all the boxes that were assigned to the second seller, that generic role, are just disappear from the form. So you don't even have to manually remove them. Okay? Pretty cool. So one thing I want to point out here, because we talked about filling out these office forms kind of using DigiSign, if you ever want to do that, you want to make sure you're adding yourself as a recipient here. You're always going to show up as on this list, but you won't necessarily be activated until you click your own button there. Now you're going to be someone who can actually come in and manipulate the document, make any changes that you need to make, or what have you, okay? Is that clear to everybody? Well, at least it will be in a second. So just make it a habit to add yourself on there for now. On the right-hand side, you can control the signing order for how this envelope is going to be signed. So for example, if you had multiple sellers on here, I could go ahead and add a signing group, and all the sellers could be in that very first group, so maybe there's 3 or 4 of them even. All 3 or 4 of them would have to sign before anyone in the second group would receive it. Make sense to everybody?
order with that first group?
As long as you, whatever, not really, so not in the, yeah, sorry, within a group, it's all simultaneous. So it'll be sent out to everybody at once, and then they can sign it any order they want. If you really needed to control that, you could add in a bunch of them like this and just put person by person by person if you really wanted to. What you can also do is assign someone who needs a copy of the signed doc. That's just somebody who won't ever be asked to sign, but once it's all fully executed, they'll just get a little email alert. Helpful if you're working with like an assistant, or if you're, your broker, your file reviewer really wants to see something, but they don't really want to be a part of that process, you can add it that way. For now, we'll just go ahead and leave everyone in one signing group and remove it. Yes?
I was going to say, why use that tab so that if I want the agent to get it directly, and then I don't have to get it back and then transfer it to them?
Exactly. So it's really helpful just to control that, and for a lot of other kind of benefits too. But let me click on next here if there aren't any questions there. And so now what we're looking at is basically the area where we're going to apply those little boxes, right? Where our clients are going to click to replace their otherwise normal wet signature. I want to point out on the right-hand side, we have like kind of a navigation panel here. First up is that exclusive right to sell, but down here we have the lockbox agreement, the acknowledgement of admin fees, and the fraud warning information. So those will be included on this envelope we send out. I want to point out this little icon right there means there's already a signature field on there. So the template was applied to these 2 documents as we requested. So we won't actually have to do anything to them, which is nice. We do, however, need to add the signature fields in for this right to sell. So let me come down here. You can see this is the information we supplied in zip forms, right? So we actually did this yesterday, but whatever. So we filled in everything in. That's all flat now. I can't change any of that. I'll show you how we can add some information to it though. But what I really want to do is just come down and try to find those areas where they would be initialing or signing. I think there's a couple of them around here. So we'll just go ahead and arbitrarily choose these. So up here are the available signature types that we have, okay? A lot of the basic ones, signature, initials, and date signed, you're probably familiar with. We'll cover a couple of these over here. But I want to show you that if I want to make initials active, I just click it like that. It has that white border around it. That's my clue. That now anywhere where I click, guess what? Those little boxes will appear. I can then move that box over here, where I would actually have Bill sign in real life. If I'm thinking that's a little bit big, I know it's going to cover the property, I can make it a little bit small, okay? Now if I had multiple sellers or multiple people on here that I wanted to assign this to, I could do it like so. So if I wanted to assign that to myself for whatever reason, I could do it. You can see the initials changed when I did that. Or I can go back up to Bill Murray, who's I actually want, actually do want initially. I can make it required or not required, okay? And if I had multiple people, I just go ahead and add in the second icon there. Questions about that?
Is that dated automatically?
No. So you do have to add a date signed field, which does get filled in automatically when they log in, but it doesn't add the date automatically.
Can you go back and just say, how do you change the signer again? Go up to the...
Oh, so if you wanted to change who actually,
Who is actually signing?
Yeah, so you would just click on this drop-down menu.
Okay.
And so if you had, everyone who's on your recipient list will appear there.
Okay.
I think some of the people have questions, yeah.
So when they get it, it's just an empty box?
It'll be a little blue box.
A little blue, and they click in the blue box.
The screen will literally move them right in front of it, and they can't even progress until they click. I'll show you the entire process.
Because there it showed like it had initials, so it looked like it had initials.
Yeah, it's kind of small there. I'll show you from the client view exactly what they see.
Okay.
So you'll see that all.
You said something about you can't change the stuff that was on it. What if something does need to be changed?
Great question. So you have 2 options in that case. If it was a zip forms form, you go back into zip forms potentially and make that change, right? And then just restart this whole process. That's the right way to do things. How many of us have time to do it the right way? Probably not a lot. So another way to do it is to use this read-only field right here. And this will actually speak to a couple different questions that have come up about filling in forms and things like that. So I'll get to your question in just a second. So what you can do, for example, is I can come in here, and let's say I made some kind of error up here. Maybe the zip code on the mailing address is wrong. There's not like a cross-out feature here. I know some of the other platforms out there have like a cross-out feature and things like that. What you can do instead is click on this read-only option right there. Now read-only basically is just you entering in text onto this form in a way that no one else can edit. It's just you putting in that text before you send it out, okay? So if I click on read-only, I'm gonna go ahead and click somewhere on the page. Now note that this is still allows me to assign it. However, it doesn't really matter who I assign it to. It's gonna show up for everybody and no one can change it but me. Still a good practice is just go ahead and add yourself as the person who's assigned to, just in case and just for whatever reason. You can type whatever you want into this box. And so like for example, if you just forgot to add in a cell phone number or something like that, instead of going back in and fixing it, you could just come in and go 555, 436, 1171, right? You can't change the font, you can't make it bigger or smaller, but if you're trying to do a last minute correction or adding in some information, you can't beat that, right? So now it's going to be sent out. That box will, when it actually gets in front of the client, they're not going to see that little box, it's just going to be some text.
What did you click to get there?
The read-only option. So the read-only ones, basically you just adding text, kind of the last minute that no one else can change.
But you can't take anything out. Like the zip
You can't really
code
take
form,
anything
you
out.
can't
The
fix
closest you can do is this. So you can kind of, and it's almost like the digital equivalent of kind of getting a marker and crossing it out. But you literally just exit out like that, and then right above it, put in whatever change you want to make, right? So let's say actually we'll do 90210, Beverly Hills, baby. All right, so we'll go ahead and put that up above there. And now those boxes would disappear when I send this out and you'll see that. It'll just be like if someone put like a little cross out and wrote 90210 up above it.
And then would it put a spot there for them to initial that? Because you have to insert
It
in?
could. So it wouldn't do it automatically. And so what you would do is come over here and just add in that initial box like that. So if you're concerned about that change, prior to sending it out, you want them to confirm that, you can just come in here and say, hey Bill, make sure you confirm that modification I just made. Yes?
So with this, do you think I still need to prescribe for like other digital signatures?
Like DocuSign or some other ones?
Yeah.
So I'll full disclosure, there will be features, I'm sure, in DocuSign or AuthentiSign or things like that you're used to that you may want to still utilize that may not be in here, and that's totally fine. A lot of people will use other signature tools with SkySlope. There's no requirement to use DigiSign. But in terms of the convenience of the integration, being able to make quick changes or quick fixes to documents, I think DigiSign will probably beat anything else, and it's still free. So if you can do without some of those features, and you don't want to pay the money for those services, I would highly recommend giving this a shot and seeing if it works for you.
Okay, they've already signed in their box, they send it back to you, and then they call the next morning and say, I've been thinking about this, I don't want to sign on my property. So can I use this to go in and change it after they've signed it, after they've initialed it?
Yeah, you could, but they would need to,
Then send it out again for
exactly,
another
yeah.
initial.
So we can talk about how to do that too.
Okay.
Let me show you another application for this read-only field. So I'm going to use this navigation area to click on the Acknowledgement of Administrative Fee, come down here, right? So remember, we couldn't fill this out and actually save it when we were trying to send it out, right? So at this point, we can come in, click on read-only, and actually fill it out. Again, really good administrative. A little rich, right? Okay, so we have that in there though. Again, that'll show up on the agreement when we send it out. So this is one way to kind of fill in those forms without saving it, printing it as a PDF, and then re-uploading it. Questions about that?
So what do you do with the icon? It's still live there now, or you just click somewhere else and it stays on it, or?
It'll just stay right there, and then you move on to the next thing that you want to do, basically. You click on, if you want to add another signature over here, you can.
Can clients call in and get information on signing? Or
Call.
is it just, like we have a number we can call, and our clients call?
Not really on that so much. I mean, if they run into an issue with DigiSign, I guess they could go to our support, but ideally they'll never even know what DigiSign is,
Okay.
or even what SkySlope is. And I'll show you when we send out the email to them, they should not even really think too much about this.
Okay.
What I wanted to point out here too on the admin fee area and the fraud warning, these signature boxes here were applied by the template. So if I go through that entire listing agreement and I add in all of my fields for everyone to sign in, and I'm thinking I don't want to do this every time I send out a listing agreement, you don't have to. You can actually save a template based on that and then just apply that template the next time. It's a little bit of an advanced feature. If we have time to cover it, I will. But just note that that's how basically these boxes appear here. The template just applied them for me automatically. Yeah.
This blue box up at the top, will it stay or disappear?
It stays, so that's gonna stay there. That's not going anywhere.
Got to stay there.
Any other questions about that? Let me go ahead and add in the signature right here for our, this is our exclusive right to sell. So I'll go ahead and add in that in for a bill, and I'll show you the date signed area here too. So that's my date signed field that I selected and added. So while the signature itself doesn't automatically add the date, once I put that date signed field there, it will show up as soon as they open up the document. All right, enough chatter. Let me actually show you what this looks like. I'm gonna click on the send button up here. Everything in DigiSign is email based, so I get to choose my subject line and my message body, right? The subject line that you see here was actually brought in by one of the templates. So part of your templates that you set up, you can customize this messaging if you want to. We'll go ahead and just say listing packet, please sign or something like that. And we can come in here and say, Bill, you are so fun. And then click on send for signatures, and voila. So we're done with our job. We can go ahead and sign now. We don't really have anything to sign because even though we're on the document, we don't really have anything. So I can click on sign now, choose my signature style if I want to, click OK, submit. Don't worry about that. Let me show you what the client actually sees, okay? So now I'm going to come in. I'm taking off my agent hat. Now I'm Bill Murray, I guess. I'm logging into my email, okay? I refresh the page just in case. And what I'll see is that I get an email from my agent, who in this case is Rob Taylor Test, and it's going to have my name in the subject line, so I'm going to go, ooh, okay, let me open that up. And it's going to say listing packet, please sign, which was the message my agent chose there. And so what I want to show you, it doesn't say SkySlope or anything else, it just says Taylor Properties in the top left. Your name in blue will be right there, and whatever message you include will be right there. Okay, so that can be thank you for choosing me as your realtor, or whatever you want it to be. Your client goes, okay, great. They click on review and sign. They do not need to sign up for a SkySlope account or a DigiSign account or anything like that. All they got to do is make sure their name is spelled correctly, and they can change that if they want to, and they can choose their signature style. So they can come in and go, what one would Bill actually choose? Probably something like that. They can send this as their legal signature by clicking I agree. At this point, they can scroll through the whole document if they want to, read all the terms, make sure everything is good, or they can jump on the rails if they trust you and just click on start. Okay? So when I do that, it's going to take me to the very first thing I have to initial, which was the very first page. Note this is how the crossout looks, right? So it's read only, and it was assigned to me, but everyone can see it. I'm the client, remember. I can kind of highlight it, but I can't change it. It's basically on the document, right? So I can see that update was made. I can initial that. That's confirming that that change was good. For the motion sick in the room, go ahead and just close your eyes later. I got more initials there, so it's just kind of taking me through one by one. Every required one I will have to actually click on to submit. That's where it gets bad. Ooh. Okay, my date's already filled out, so I don't have to worry about that. I click on signature. Again, it's going to jump me down to the next one. This has already been filled in for me by the template. Awesome. Same thing down here. At this point, I have clicked on everything I have to click on. I can return to the document, make sure it looks good to me, review it before submitting it, or I click submit, and the document will at this point be fully executed. I can download it for my own personal records, but for your purposes, taking off our Bill Murray hat, putting back our agent hat on, what happens to that contract or that listing agreement? Where did it go? What do I do with it? Right? Let's jump back into our property file. So every time you send out an envelope, it's going to redirect you to this DigiSign area. It's kind of an administrative area. We'll come back here at the end and walk you through some of the features here. But I actually want to show you, let's actually search for our listing. So if I come over here and start typing in 1101 prime, you see that actually we've created and canceled a bunch of these. So you can actually search for your files here. I'm actually just going to look for the active one using this. What I want to show you is that in the Documents tab now, we should see at the very top here, we got this right here. So this says ERS exclusive right to sell. But I know because it just came in, that's actually our packet of documents. That's not one document, that's all 4 of the documents that we just sent out. Fully executed and signed. If I'm not sure about that, I can click on the name or on the actual document name there and open up my PDF, and I'll see that it's 12 pages long, so it's a packet, and there's my DigiSign verified link right there. So if you're ever concerned about the validity of the signatures or whatever, you can come in and click on this. This actually gives you a certificate that you could download or share. It shows the IP address of everyone that signed, when they signed, everything, right? So this is kind of your guarantee that everything is good to go. Cool? Questions about that? I don't get a lot of questions about the certificate, believe it or not. So here's everything that's on the listing agreement. I can go through and make sure everything's good, that all my signatures are there, but you can kind of see there's BM, so I'm good. I'll go ahead and close that then. And now you're probably thinking, okay, I got this one document, which we could pretend really was everything we needed, right? Instead of just 4 different files, but maybe it was every disclosure we needed. So we have this one document, we have all these different items on the checklist, right? So how do we take that one document and get it turned into all these discrete items? Right? That's a good question. So we come back into the Documents tab, let me show you how to do that. Every single PDF that gets uploaded into SkySlope, especially here in the context of this Documents area, will have this split feature here. What that will allow you to do is so you don't have to go into Adobe or whatever it is you use to modify PDFs and do this manually on your hard drive. You can actually, once you get the file into SkySlope, break it apart right here, okay? So what you're looking at is even smaller probably for you in the back than what you're comfortable with. I apologize for that. This little preview area here shows you the actual document. It's not designed for you to really get into the nitty-gritty of it. You can if you want to, by zooming in or clicking on this little arrow button and going into presentation mode. That'll allow you to see more of the screen. The point of this really is to understand how is the packet of documents that you sent out and got returned back, how is it comprised, right? So we know we have the listing agreement right here. If we scroll through here, we can see that it's, 8 pages long? Yeah, so it looks like it ends on page 8. And on page 9, we have our lockbox addendum. So armed with that information, let's come over here and let's start typing in listing agreement. Oh, nothing's happening. Maybe I don't know what the name of the item is on the checklist. I can hit spacebar, and I'm actually going to pull up the entire checklist right here. Now I can look for the item that I want. Oh, exclusive right to sell, that's what it's called, right? Oops. I can click on that, and I can say, hey, SkySlope, that's page 1 through 8 of this packet. I'll continue doing that. So I got the lockbox addendum. Looks like that's 2 pages long. I can come over here and start searching again. Oh, we found it that time. So now I got that. That's going to be pages 9 and 10. We come down here, so admin fee. I'll go ahead and start typing that there. That's going to be page 11. And the last one was fraud. You can go ahead and grab that. So now when I click on split and assign, I'm going to take that 12-page document and make copies of all the page ranges I've selected here and move them right into the checklist items. Okay? So when I do that, it's going to say, nice job, get that nice personal affirmation, which we all need after a long day. Go back to the checklist, and voila, all those items that were once required are now in review. That means my file reviewer has a notification to take a look at it, make their designation on whether or not it's compliant, but my job as an agent is done, assuming I have the rest of the required items filled in too. Questions about that? We went through a lot, yes.
So when we created the envelope, we took those separate documents, combined them into a one PDF document, and we gave them the rights to sign and initial. So when we get it back, then we have to split it up.
Correct.
Or we have to send them 3 or 2 different emails, those documents by themselves.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend doing that.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier just to send them all out at once and get them back up and split them up however you'd like. Okay. I would think. But in theory, it can be done in piecemeal or whatever.
Right.
But that's in the kind of a good scenario where you can just gather all the documents up at once, get them in front of your client, have them sign everything, get it back. That'll be the way you can get it uploaded. Yes.
If you're going through and you're signing the fields on the DigiSign, can you save your progress on that?
So that actually gets saved. It's one of those one of the items in the web or in our site that actually gets saved automatically. And there's a drafts folder. So there's actually a way. So as you're going in and adding that stuff, you get interrupted. You can go back in and start that again in the drafts area.
Okay.
So again, we try to get some time towards the end to go into DigiSign because that's been one of the more popular things we've discussed here. So we'll try to get some time to show you that. Yes, sir.
What happens if it's not one of these required documents?
So if it's not one of the required documents, then you have some options here, right? So if it's one of these if applicable ones, go ahead, you can turn them into any of these items and then just leave a little note. So, I don't know, if it is a condo, for example, you can come in, you upload your condo disclosure and say, like, hey, Mike, this should be required, or something like that. And then that way they'll see that. So we'll talk a little bit now about the review process and actually communicating with your file reviewer and stuff like that. I just want to make sure you all understand how to create your property file, how to get your forms, how to get them signed, how to get them turned in. Yes, sir.
One thing to note too is when you're splitting a document, you don't have to use every page of that document. You can just go and pick out pages 6 and 7, and that's it. You don't have to go through 1, 2, 3 all the way through every single one, just whatever you need. And you don't have to assign them when you're doing that. You can just pull out pages 7 and 8 and call that some other doc, and it just goes in your documents.
Yes.
Now, can you, when you have all this done, can you send it to the other agent?
Yes, and we'll talk about how to do
Okay.
that. There's a lot of different ways you can actually share documents with this. You can, and we'll go through the two main ways to do it that I think are pretty cool. Yes.
So Mike, can you please come again? Like, we don't need to split everything. I don't understand it.
Well, every checklist item has to have one document, that particular document assigned to it. So when we go and look at the checklist, when we go look at acknowledgement of admin fee, we want to see only acknowledgement of admin fee. When we go to contract, we want to see only contract, and so forth, for every item on the checklist. So if you have one single document that has multiple documents in it, you would just pull out those individual checklist items of that document and assign it to that particular checklist item.
I got you.
And just to give you an idea, the way I showed you how to use the split and assign feature is a pretty kind of direct, like if you know all the items that need to go in the checklist, and you can kind of just do that. That's your only real purpose. That's a pretty easy way to do it. But it's a fairly sophisticated tool in that, as you mentioned, you can cut these up however you like. If you have a 12-page document you're breaking up, you only need 2 of those pages, you can grab only 2 of those pages. You don't even have to assign them to a checklist item. I could just come in here and call this rando docs, or whatever I want to call it, and I can say I want that to be page 1 through 9, or page 6 through 9. I'm not going to split anything else up. I'm going to hit the word split. Note split and assign is not available because I didn't choose a checklist item. All I'm going to do is maintain that original document, but if I go back in there, I'm going to see that I have a new document called rando docs. That's it. Yes, sir.
When you miss something, you got to resend it back to the your client. Like in DocuSign, I generally just do the whole PDF, copy PDF, and then send the whole thing back. I guess you can use that split thing to split it and just send back the area that you lost.
Yep. So sometimes I'll see people do that where it's like, oh, you missed like page 10 or whatever. You split out page 10, send that back to them when it comes back in. The only main issue with that is when you upload it back into the checklist, for example, there'll be multiple items there. So if you say, let's say, I don't know, our exclusive right to sell, we click attach right here, and let's arbitrarily say that rando docs is the one page that we sent to the client. They signed it, it came back, right? I'm sorry. I can now attach that or assign that to that item. And what will happen is, see how that X disappeared? That's a little clue that you have more than one document to that placeholder. And you can see that when you click on the paperclip icon, you have 2 items in there now. So if you're going to do it that way, my recommendation would be to go ahead and come in here and say, second item is page 10 that seller missed, or something like that. Let the file reviewer know why you have it that way. That way they're not confused and they can just make sure they make sense of how that works. Otherwise, you might as well send out the whole packet again. But
Chris, is there a way then? I mean, can't you, if you have, let's say they missed the one page, and now you've sent it for them to sign again, can't you just remove the first one?
Yeah, so in the case where you were just resending out the entire right to sell, you just left their prior signatures on there, what you could do is just come back in and instead of adding in the separate document, you would just remove it here.
Remove it there
and then you'll see that it goes back into required, and then you would just, once that fully executed document comes back in, you just attach it.
Then you attach it.
So it's like, oh, there it is, that's the one that we just got back, there you go. And then it goes right back into in review.
Okay.
And so that's kind of that cycle, right? And we'll talk about that actually right now. So at this point, once you started turning in your documents, the ball's out of your court. It's now on your file reviewers to go in there and make sure that your right to sell and everything's compliant. And they'll come in there and they're actually going to have like little buttons that you don't see there, but they have access to that accept or reject your documents. Now, you'd be notified of these changes really only in one of 2 ways. One, by coming in and looking at it yourself, or via email. So they actually have a way of notifying you via email. It's not automatic, but they can choose to do this, about the status of your file. So you may see an email that looks a little bit like this. So again, let's put our agent hat back on. And it will come from your file reviewer. In my case, my file reviewer's name is Broker Bob. And it will say something like SkySlope checklist reviewed. Let me zoom in here. Why is it so small? It'll have the address of whatever property file got reviewed there. Your file reviewer may include a custom message, just kind of saying, hey, get it together, Paul, like, figure it out, whatever. But more importantly, what you want to look for is this, basically. It's going to be a snapshot of the file, and we'll talk about what sales documentation and disclosure documentation stuff are in a little bit. This is the contract file. But you're going to see the status of each item, right? So what you want everything to eventually be is completed. That means your file reviewer looked at it, they think it's great, and you don't need to worry about it ever again. If it's still showing up as required, that means you haven't turned anything in yet. What you want to really keep your eye out for, though, is the incomplete items, right? They'll show up as purple. So Keep an eye out for that. And you also want to look for the comments that are left here. So the little comment box goes two ways. Your file reviewers can leave comments for you as well. And whatever comment they've left for that item will show up here. So that should give you a pretty good clue as to why they're rejecting it. What's nice is you can actually click on that Send via DigiSign button right there. That takes you right into DigiSign, pulls up that form for you. You have the seller's info right there. You can basically just send it right out. When it gets signed, guess what? It comes right back into SkySlope. So you don't have to go out and fish for it. That's why I say you might have features in DocuSign or other things that you like. Hard to beat that. Okay? Questions about this?
So,
Yes.
when you take a listing, right, let's say you go out on an appointment and you already have your paperwork with you. You have to, and you get that listing. You bring it back, you create a transaction, and then you have to upload each piece. You can upload it all as one, but
Yeah.
then you have to separate it
Using
and
the
put
split
each
feature.
piece in line.
Yep. Otherwise, there's not really a way for your file reviewer to know where it belongs.
Okay.
But once you have that in there, pretty much the work is done. So as long as you get comfortable with that split feature, which even that will be upgraded soon as a little teaser, but for now it is a manual process still. But any other questions about that? Yes, sir.
I mean, there's going to be a little ramp up as we work with this, and there's going to be mistakes to be made, and we're going to make mistakes.
No,
What happens
agents
in that
don't make
mistake?
mistakes. No, don't worry. So everything in SkySlope can be fixed.
Well, do we know there's a mistake? We made a mistake. Do we know that, I mean, like alarms and emails and things?
They definitely, so if it's a bad enough mistake, you'll find out about it, I'm sure, from your file reviewers. But I would say, for the most part, things can be modified. So if you make a mistake in terms of getting the information you supplied here, like let's think about the situations where it could go wrong from a, this standpoint, right? You can come back in here and edit any of the information that's here. So whatever needs to be updated can be updated. Even if you chose the wrong checklist, the worst thing that's going to happen is that we just load in the new checklist and remove the items you attached. They're still going to be in your Documents tab though, split up however you split them up. So you just have to go back in and attach them. So it's a little bit of a pain in your butt, but not the end of the world.
So it doesn't disappear in the ether and...
No, nothing. SkySlope, we're so nervous about that we don't even allow you to delete anything. Like if you go into this Documents tab here, there's no delete button. You can move it into a trash folder, but it's just a folder called trash. That's it. I mean, you could have called it anything else.
So this might be more of a question for Mike. How do we go about getting zip forms from? We give it to our board?
I think you just go to Zip Form website and sign up there.
Okay, but is there a discount or something at that?
You get a free G card.
It's free for your association.
Yeah, it's through that.
Don't you have to activate it?
I don't know, that's just.
Basically, for Zip Form, just go to their website and buy it. It's free. You don't have to buy it if you sign up if you're buying it. And then you select your area, which is free. And then if you want additional regions, you can purchase them. But you'll see in the list of available regions, most of them are free. Just one of the free ones, you have everything separately free, you have to pay for it.
So if I'm Southern Maryland and I do most of my Antelope County, and I have,
You'd have to pay for Anne Arundel.
so it would be better for me to just switch my card.
Just switch to Anne Arundel.
They just didn't have it when I started.
If you go to the state forms and you just go to MAR, every single form that they have in the state of Maryland is there.
Right, but it
Yeah.
doesn't.
Yeah, but it won't be in Zip Form. So
No, but you're just gonna have to do it manually, but it's
Yeah,
there.
I know.
It's only like $20 a year. I think it's like, was it $30 a year for all the forms in there.
Yeah, but this was
It's really
plus.
cheap.
Yeah, how much
Yeah,
is
this
It was
lot.
pro or something,
So
plus.
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 Yeah, it's next to nothing. It's like pennies a day to have every single form in every county.
Yeah. That's
Right.
And one more thing, if I can real quick.
Wait, definitely.
The biggest mistakes that we see, that I've seen come through here so far, are just that people select the wrong office. They think it should be Anne Arundel because that's where our office is. It's not where our office is, that's where the property is, it's the region. Office is the region where the property is. And it's
Our region will be.
whatever,
Southern Maryland
wherever.
Association.
If you're doing it in Southern Maryland, it would be Southern Maryland. If the property's in Baltimore, it would be Baltimore.
Yeah.
If the property's in Virginia, it would be Virginia.
I see.
Did I, yeah, I
The
want to make
association you
sure,
belong to.
yeah, my apologies, if I didn't make that clear.
Where your office is.
If I didn't make that clear at the start, when you come
Yeah.
in here to do this, I'll go ahead and just go through this whole thing.
Why
real
don't we
quick.
just say county? Why does it say office instead
I
of
know,
county?
Because that's the
That's
term,
the
because
thing.
traditionally, like for most SkySlope users, they're not
They don't
all of them
have
are
counties.
like across multiple states and have like those different paperwork requirements. Sometimes it's like, we have an office in LA, we have an office in San Diego, and so we want to just organize that.
And again, all this information is on the SkySlope info tab on our company site. Every email I send out is there with all this information. I recommend everybody go through all these emails and read them. There's a lot of very important information on there.
Yeah, but just to emphasize here, just to make sure everyone's totally clear on this,
It's county.
when Sky asks you what office should this listing be under, she's basically saying what county or what region is this property actually located?
Right.
Not
So what is
where
it?
are you currently located,
What
not
is it?
what office do you go to, but where's the actual property? Yes.
Oh, why don't you just change it like that?
Some states don't have county.
Well, just use location.
Just the,
Location
all
of
the
property.
emotion behind the answer to that question that I have.
Justin, that was the first thing I'd ask when I call these guys.
I get that question all the time. Why can't you just change it? If I could just do that, oh boy, that'd be great.
A couple more things.
Yes.
Office type is another thing. Make sure you read the different office type, the checklist, I'm not saying office type, checklist type. So after you select your office, the reason you're in, the next one is checklist type. Don't just select standard, because then it's going to give you all disclosures there. If it's a foreclosure, if there's new construction, you're not going to have disclosure forms. So make sure you select the correct one so it gives you the correct checklist. A lot of people just hit standard to go through, and then I ask them for all these signatures and documents, like what's foreclosure? So then we have to go delete the checklist, start all over again. But just make sure those two things.
You don't want to check this for animal.
Correct.
And you don't want a full checklist
You don't want
for
new construction,
a short
it's a short sale.
So will we still have access without going through there for ones that we want to pull manually for? Like with the way we get checklists now?
Oh, yeah, checklists are still on your dashboard on the
all right.
site.
Right.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to stop everyone. I know it's all really important, but I don't have enough time to show you everything I have to show you. So I'm gonna take back the time and no more questions. All right. All right, so let me show you what happens as you start to enter in these listings. You're gonna start to accumulate them, right? I wanna show you how they're moving through the process and all of that. So you wanna come into manage listings to see all of your different listings there. We kind of went over what you see here. I wanna talk about the fate of these files, right? So every listing pretty much has two fates before it. One is cancellation or withdrawal or being withdrawn. You can do that by coming in here, and next to each one of these listings there's a button here. So if you put in something and it just needs to be trashed entirely, come in here and click on this button. We'll go ahead and withdraw maybe this one there. It'll come up with a little note right here just asking you for a reason. You need to come in and say seller is a wuss. Click submit, and now that's been recorded there in the log. So it'll come down here to this canceled listings pending approval area. You can't approve a cancellation, but you can, request that it be canceled. So it'll hang out there until one of your file reviewers comes in and clears it out. Okay, that's the bad outcome. Let's talk about the good outcome. Your listing has been sitting there for a couple days. You did such a good job marketing it though. It gets an offer. Your seller accepts that offer, and so now what you want to do is actually get paid on this deal, right? No one gets paid on listing. So what you can do is come in here, and what I want you to all remember is that you need to accept the contract. You need to convert this listing into a transaction. Because again, transaction is our umbrella term for under contract, no matter if you work with the buyer, no matter if you work with the seller, or both, or whatever, right? So when we click on this accept contract button, our listing will magically turn into a transaction. What's great about that is that we don't have to retype in all the information we've already put in. So our address, our seller info, all the listing documentation we've uploaded, that's all still there, right? All we're going to do now is come in and add in some additional required items. We'll try to run through this as quickly as we can because we don't have a ton of time. At this point, the MLS number is required. So it's not required on the listing side, but it is once you convert it to a transaction or if you create a transaction from scratch, which you will do if you're repping a buyer, right? In that case, if you have that number, go ahead and type it in. If you don't have it, go ahead and say do not have. Okay, so just try to give your best information that you can. Yes, sir?
Right now, we're in a transition phase. We have a county number and we have this right MLS. Not everything seems to be consistent. I assume it's going to be the right MLS.
Right MLS is the one that seems to be working the best here. But for the most part, you probably wouldn't use this feature from the number standpoint since we're kind of moving towards the address-based thing. So you're just going to pop in the address. If there is any kind of MLS connection, we'll pull it in regardless of the number. But the one you want to have here is probably the right MLS. Some additional items you want to have down here are going to be the sale price. So that's going to be what you're actually selling this for. I'll just kind of type in something randomly there. Acceptance date and close date, right? So now that you have an acceptance date, again, this is why I say, until you're under contract, probably best to go ahead and just keep things in personal docs because you don't have this information yet. And you're going to have to supply fake information and go back in and try to remember later to fix it. So go ahead and make sure you're supplying good information here. We're going to have a 1-week close because that's how fast I close escrow. Not somehow. Everything else is pretty much normal though and should be carried over with the exception of this checklist type right here. This is very important. So just like your listing has a type, which controls what paperwork appears on that listing file, your transactions have a checklist type. And this is going to basically control what paperwork gets included now that you're under contract. So you have a little bit of the forms that you need, right? Those listing forms. but you don't have any of your reports, disclosures, all the closing documents, everything else, this is where you're gonna get that stuff. Now the list that you're gonna see here is a little bit long, because it's broken down by type of property, so empty lot right, regular good old residential sale, leases and stuff like that. But it's also broken down by who you're representing, okay? That's important, and if you kind of think about it for a second, you'll realize why, okay? So if we come in here and we're creating a transaction from scratch, right? Our buyer's got an offer accepted. We go in and we click on the Create Transaction button. We would want to choose the residential standard for buyers. Why? Because that list is going to include everything we need. But because we're repping the seller and we're taking the listing we already created and converting it, we want to choose the second one right here for the seller. Why? Because it's going to include everything we don't already have. We don't want to reduplicate stuff and add in like, all the listing agreement stuff that we've already uploaded and have to upload it again. We want to just choose the list that complements the one we already have that finalizes everything, okay? Just an little FYI. Does that make sense to everybody? If it doesn't, just choose the person that you're repping. Don't even worry about why. All right, so at this point, we're ready to move on. You can click on Next down here. So just like before, when we were looking at the contact screen, it's the same kind of thing, except we have more requirements now that we're under contract. We already have our seller information. That got pulled over from our listing, so we don't have to retype that. All we have to do is click on Next up here, or we can actually click on these directly. So we need to supply some purchaser information. My favorite purchaser is always going to be the old Steve Martin. If we have some of this contact information, we still can supply it, but unless it has a red star on there, it's not required. So you don't have to worry about it, okay? I'll click on Save here. Now, one area where that isn't necessarily the case is this title escrow attorney area. None of these items are actually required at the time of the creation of the contract. But I know Mike wants to have you, if you are working with heritage title, to go ahead and indicate that here. At least because you can see here that we have some different areas, but you can come down to this title company field and just type in heritage, financial, or title, or whatever it is. Sorry. And then when you click Save here, the file reviewers will see that. They can then get it over to them a little bit faster to process it faster. So I think you guys have a pretty good working relationship with that. I want to point out something here as well. So in the Search Contacts field here, this is actually giving you access to your own personal digital directory. So every contact we've been entering in, Bill, Steve, anybody else that we put in here, gets saved into our own little directory that only we have access to. There's also a company directory that Mike has shared with all of you that includes a lot of your ancillary contacts and stuff like that. So if you know, for example, you're working with Molly over at Heritage, you can come in and start typing her name here, and guess what? She's already in your system. You can go and grab her, and you click on her name, everything gets filled out for you, okay? And let's say we click on Save here, so now that information's in there, which is good. Let's say we come to the agent on the other side, same kind of thing. Maybe we've worked with an agent before, and we've already entered in their contact information. We can just come in and start typing. Let's go ahead and pretend that Ben Porter is that person. And it goes ahead and then it fills everything out for us, including the required information, which is good. Questions about that?
So what if the buyer comes with their own title company?
Pardon me?
If the buyer comes with their own title company?
Then just go ahead and enter that information in here if you have it. So whatever the real world situation is, go ahead and enter it there. And you can add in notes and stuff if it's like an unusual situation. Cool. So I'm going to click on the Submit page, or the Submit button now. It'll take me to the Commission tab. I've been informed that this is basically irrelevant for all of you. So just make sure those star items are in there, and that it's correct, and I think you should be good. Is that correct, Mike?
Correct.
Correct. All right, so that's easy. If this pops up, I recommend ignoring it. It's just something that we're doing, so just go ahead and ignore that. It's just an advance on your commission, which I would recommend against it. All right, so we're back on the checklist. Everything is pretty much the same. Everything I've shown you in terms of looking at this checklist, figuring out what paperwork requirements you have, getting into zip forms, getting into that office docs area, getting everything signed, it all still applies. You have the same Documents tab. We haven't talked about some of these other tabs over here, which we'll kind of transition you over to in a little bit, with questions about how I just converted that listing into a transaction and why I did that. Everyone cool with that? Again, if I started off with a buyer and that buyer was under contract, would I have created a listing? No. I would have gone in and created a transaction, and I would have chosen the list where I rep the buyer. That way I would have gotten all this stuff now. Because if we come down here, guess what? A lot of the items are under listing documentation. I don't want to duplicate that work, I also don't want to lose out on it, right? So that's all still there. Now I just got to come in and figure out the rest of this. A couple items to just kind of, actually we'll skip all that. So at this point,
I have a quick question.
yes.
Sorry.
If
Yes.
you're creating a transaction for the buyer where it says office, if this is already after, you don't do this till they've found the property you're buying.
Correct.
You
Until
can't
they're,
do it
until,
to like track it.
so in that case, I would recommend just having it in your personal docs area, in which case
Okay.
you're just uploading whatever you have.
Wait until they're.
Exactly. Once they're under contract, then you'll go in and choose the right office, because that'll be based on wherever that property is. Does that make sense to everyone? Even if you're creating a transaction from scratch, you still have that, what office are you in, what type is this, and those are still really important questions for you there, okay? Cool. All right, so let's talk about some other things that we've kind of shown you here. So at this point, I want to point out, because you might be getting documents in from the buyer's agent and things like that, right? Just they might be sending you emails and stuff like that, and you want to figure out, well, how do I get like a contract or whatever broken up and in here that I may not have initiated myself or whatever. So what you can do is use this email address right here. Someone else, you had pointed that out earlier. So for every single listing and every single transaction, SkySlope will auto-generate an email address which is guaranteed to be unique to that listing or transaction. You can see here that I've used this 1101 prime address a bunch of times. Doesn't matter, it just increments a little number there, so that way it's always unique. Chances are, though, you won't be creating the same listing 100 times like I do every day, so that'll be easy to manage. You can kind of think of this email not as like an actual email account. You're not going to be sending emails from it. No one's going to be, sending emails to it necessarily. You can think of it more as like a way to grab or capture information, correspondence, documents, things like that that you may be exchanging with your client or with another agent or what have you. Okay? Let me give you an example of that. So if I come in here and I right-click on this and I copy this email address to my clipboard, let me go ahead and open up an email here, and this could be from my agent, it could be from my client, it could be from the agent on the other side, whatever, right? So here's Bill, he's thanking me for the drinks or whatever. I got a listing packet here. This could easily be a contract. It could easily be some disclosures from whoever else, right? Whatever it might be. If it's an email, I can come in here and click on forward, and rather than downloading this to my hard drive, clogging it up, and having to re-upload everything, I just simply forward into that property-specific email address, click on send. And now, when we come back into SkySlope, which give it a second, because again, I'm sending this into a satellite in space, it's beaming back down. Dun, 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 dun. So let's refresh the page here. There's our listing packet. Again, could be a purchase contract, whatever you want. At this point, it's in your property file. That's great. And you can come in and you can split it up just like you could before. So I can come in, there's my lead-based paint, whatever it might be, break it all up in the checklist just like I should. So I've shown you, right, we can upload things, we can get them digisigned and they come back in. You can also just forward them into that property-specific email address. That's another way to capture that information. What's also cool about using that link or that email, and you have a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, cool. What's also cool about that is it gets captured here on this tab called the log tab. The log tab's on every type of file, listing, and transaction. And it is a stone tablet record of everything you've done on that file. So let me scroll down here to the very bottom and you can see that it shows that we created this listing earlier today. We added in our contact, all the stuff we added to the checklist, even that it came in from zip forms and stuff like that, all gets recorded here. When we convert it into a transaction, the time, who did that gets recorded. If our file reviewer came in there and started reviewing things, all of that would get recorded here in the log as well. So there's perfect visibility into everything that everyone's doing. And none of this can be removed. So once it's in there, it's in there. Also though, as you can see at the very top here, we have this email received type of log entry. That can actually be clicked on, and guess what? There's our email. So if you're communicating a lot with your clients via email, which I know we all do, and they're saying something that's relevant to the transaction, and you don't want to wait until after the fact to go and get all those things together and submit them to the file if that's a requirement for you, just go ahead and CC that correspondence using the property-specific email address, or forward it in the way I showed you, and that will be recorded here in the log as an independent source that cannot be removed. So even if you lost access to all your emails or whatever, you're not, SOL. Questions about that? You can also use this with text messages, believe it or not. So if you get a text from your client and it's like something relevant to the transaction, press and hold it on your smartphone, forward it into this email address. Your carrier will convert it into an email and it gets recorded here in the log for you. Cool. So last but not least, we won't really cover the property tab at all here. There is a task area, which we're also not going to cover in a lot of detail. I point this out because it's available to you all to help manage your time and your activity. Because the checklist does not care about when you do things. It cares, what paperwork requirements you have, whether or not it's been turned in, whether or not it's compliant. But there's no, not going to be a reminder or anything like that. You just turn it in when you turn it in. This area can be used to manage some of that. And if you want more information on this, we have tutorials, a lot of other things. But I want to make sure we cover everything else today. Okay? We come back out here. Any questions so far? Cool. So, sorry, go ahead, Mike. Or Jason. Okay, sorry, I'm like hypersensitive. I'm hearing things today, I guess. All right, so again, if you're working with the buyer, come in and click on that Create Transaction button, start that process from scratch. Either way though, once you have a transaction, whether you converted it or created it, it's going to be housed here in this Manage Transactions area. And this is a really important area for you because this is all your deals under contract, right? These are all the things you really want to make sure they're moving through. You again can see a dashboard view of all these items, what the property address is, status, how many incomplete items you have. That's important because that's how many required items are still on the checklist that you haven't turned in yet. And you can jump into any of those files and do all the same work we've shown, right? These files can be canceled, okay? So if the deal does fall through, you can come in and cancel that. One thing that's kind of nice is that if it was a listing that got converted, you actually can save that listing. That's kind of why we set up the system the way that we did. So for example, 1101 Prime Lane, right? Let's say Steve Martin's credit is shoddy, and he has to back out of the deal. I can come in and click on the Cancel Transaction button and say, Steve is a bum. Click on Submit. And what I want to see is this right here. So SkySlope's going to be like, wait, you converted this listing, earlier. Do you want to just go ahead and reactivate that? Because you probably didn't lose the listing, right? And you go, yeah, sure. So when I do that, I lose the transaction. So that's gone. It's actually down here in my Cancel Transactions Pending Approval area. I've canceled this a few times. And so my file reviewer can deal with that. But I can come back in and manage listings now. And guess what? There's 1101 Prime Avenue, or Prime Lane. So Steve fell through, whatever, but then maybe, I don't know, Bobcat Goldthwait comes along and he submits an offer on it. I can then accept that offer again and go through that whole transaction creation process. I don't have to re-upload all my listing stuff. That's still there. Everyone cool on that? Excellent. Yes?
So what about if it's the buyer? They have, this house, they have skipped it. They're gonna get another one and they're already in the system. What do you do?
So their contact information is still there, but since that transaction fell through, you'll have to cancel it out. So I'll come back over here and show you. For example, so test ignore, I think it's just a straight buyer deal. I would just cancel it out and then have to recreate a new transaction when he or she gets an offer accepted on that new property.
So that comes to what I was asking you, that how do I remove uploaded contract to put a new one for the same person?
So think of it less as uploading to the same person and more about, SkySlope's very focused on the property address. Yeah. So we have an address and you'll add a contact to it, you'll add documents to it. You're thinking of it more like you have a person in there that you're adding properties to. It's kind of the opposite way around. So when you create that property file for 123 Main Street, if that deal falls out, you got to remove 123 Main Street and create a new one for 345 whatever street.
What about if the same property is there except the price has come down and you have to change everything?
Then what you would do is just open that up, make that modification, and then if you need to re-upload the documents, you can, but you wouldn't recreate the file in that case. Okay. If you're confused about that, stick around and we can walk through that together too.
Please, I know.
All right, so let me come back into Manage Transactions here. And what I want to talk to you about is the kind of the fun part, right? So we've talked about cancellations and all that other stuff. Eventually, this deal will close. You'll have an actual escrow date. Your file reviewer can jump into that contract at that point. Only they can do this, is they actually open up the pending file, and there's they have like a little escrow now close button. They click on that, and that will move your file down here, which you don't have any examples of that in this particular account, so let me show you what that will look like. So I'm now logging into our internal training account here, so you can kind of get a sense of things. Demo stuff, same layout, same application. I'm coming into Manage Transactions. And you can see I have a bunch of them down here, but I have some closed transactions right here. So as your transactions go from pending into closed, this is what they'll look like, and they'll come down to this bottom third of this screen. This is what you want to see. You want to see your files actually move in here, because at this point, they're really close to paying you, more or less, right? You still may have some incomplete items, though. You can see here a lot of my closed files do. So while it says closed, you still have the ability to go in and change things. You can upload new documents. You can get things corrected. You can continue to do work on the file. Okay? This is just an indication to you that you're really close to being archived, in which case that's when you can pretty much guarantee a check come to you, right? So keep an eye on this area, make sure you're jumping into the checklist, make sure you're communicating with your file reviewer and keeping this move along, because ultimately what you want to see is that these files move over here, again going back out to the main page here, into the Access Archives area, okay? This is the final resting spot for every one of your successful deals, kind of like the nursing home in the sky. Your trophy case, you're coming in here, you're feeling good about all the deals you've closed, you can open these up, look at them if you want to. However, none of the information that's there can be modified once they're archived. So all this information's here, I have no way of saving any change that way, okay? On the checklist, if something's been marked as complete, I can't really remove it. It's
What
just
happens
sealed
if it
off.
needs to be?
Then you need to communicate with your file reviewer. They can either reactivate the file. You still can add things. So even if like this has been completed and it's good to go, I can still come in here and attach and add a new item. I just can't take off that thing because it's already been archived. At this point, you've already been paid on it.
I had something recently like that happen.
In which case, your file reviewers have the ability to reactivate it and they can make those changes for you. That hopefully is a rare situation.
It was rare, but it happened.
So we can account for it.
So what causes it to go from in the managed transaction down to what's the process for it sloping
So the
down?
process for moving down from just the normal pending to closed is your file reviewer going in there and clicking a button that only they can see. So that process is kind of out of your hands.
You don't mind? It's gonna be a little bit different for us.
Yeah, 'cause
in
we-
every contract or transaction, you're gonna have you're gonna have 2 or 3 sections. If there's a listing included, you're gonna have 3. But generally, it's just gonna be sales documentation and closing documentation. Now, we don't even look at the closing documentation, like your commission breakdown or closing disclosures, until everything in your sales documentation has been submitted. So once everything that's required in your sales documentation is there, then we're gonna look at your commission breakdown and closing disclosure. Once that's completed, your check sent out, then we're gonna close it. It's gonna go into your close and then archive.
Did anyone hear that? Gotta get everything in sales docs. Let me actually open up one of these files for you to show you what we were talking about there. So on the listing side, you get one big long list of things called listing documentation. We group that together because we want to be able to bring it over to the contract when the time comes. But on the contract side, on the checklist, they might be divided up a little bit differently. And so the categories that he was referring to are sales documentation. So all these items up here that are required need to be turned in before they look at any of the closing documents. These are the items that you definitely want them to look at so they'll pay you, so just keep that in mind.
It's also releases, so.
That's it.
So with having, you know, sometimes our transactions, the closing date changes. It can be pushed up, it can be pushed back, or it can just be on time. Lately, my stuff has been being pushed up. So when you have that's pushed up, I guess we would submit another form, another addendum, and then you all would see that and then just change the closing date? Because we close in
You
our
can change the
escrow.
closing date. We're not really concerned with the closing date at all.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with the status of your transaction. That's just for your own personal information, enough to know, like, wow, this looks like it closed a month ago, what's going on?
Yeah, so and they'll actually choose a different closing date on there. Your admin actually gets to choose what they call the actual closing date. So whatever you have in here is relatively regarded by most folks to be an estimate, and it can be modified. So if I come in here, go ahead and click on next. Now it's been updated.
And it doesn't matter if it's different than the one on the MLS.
You may still need to submit paperwork on that, and that's actually something I wanted to point out here on the checklist. When we're talking about canceling files and stuff like that, your cancellation won't be approved until you submit right here. You have items where you can submit your cancellation notices here, okay, under the closing documents area. So make sure you submit those.
So when he says that, I mean, because I know we're talking about real estate and different terminology from state to state. But for example, I had a deal that fell through because a customer lost their job. So all I did was submit the paper to have their money returned back to them.
That would be right there in the closing documents.
Okay.
You would upload a release
All
right
right.
there, and then that would go directly to James, she would release it and close it
Okay.
out.
All right.
So Mike, let me get this clear. So if your closing date changes, okay, and you submit an addendum and you know you're the buyer's agent or whatnot, you don't really have to have that uploaded into our SkySlope,
An extension?
an extension of
Yeah,
time?
well, any documents that are important for your contract, upload them there. There might not be a checklist item, but put it in your document.
Just put it in
so
the
it's
doc,
there.
okay.
Yeah, just so we have it on record.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's going to be blank spaces for things like that.
No, documents, you put anything you want in there. There's no checklist for documents.
Yeah,
Okay.
so he's referring to the documents tab area. So if you look on the checklist, you want to turn something in, it's not there, you can still upload it here, and then maybe just send a note to your file reviewer or in one of the comment boxes and just let them know about it.
Now, there will be another item on all the checklists that will say additional documents. That'll be up there soon, so at that case, you can upload to that particular thing as much as you want.
Because there's documents like the inspection reports and closing help that are not required documents, but
Yeah,
we use them all the time.
Yeah, some of those, like the inspection reports, things like that, might be added to the
Okay.
applicable checklist items, but we're still working on the extra checklist items right now. That's not set in stone yet.
Okay.
I want to show you guys a few more things here. We talked a little bit about getting documents from your counterpart agent that you're working with. There may be times where you need to share those documents as well. I think that was a question that someone had asked earlier. So I want to talk to you about the two different ways that I would recommend considering sharing documents out of SkySlope. Because of course, you can always come in here, and if you want to, manually download each one of these PDFs, email them out to whoever you want. I think that's the hard way to do it personally. So what I would recommend is just simply selecting maybe one or more documents, and these might be disclosures, they might be closing documents, whatever you're trying to share with somebody. And you can come over here and click on the email option. So we did assign documents out here earlier, but if you want to just directly email them out, you can click on that. That'll open up a little kind of little mini email client right here. I can send this to literally anybody, but this also does have access to the user or contacts directory, so you can just start typing, Mike Taylor, for example. You can choose your subject line, and then whatever you chose down here will be automatically attached to that email. Okay? What's nice about that, in addition to saving you the time of downloading and re-uploading, is that it also gets recorded in the log too. So it gets recorded as an email out. Cool. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is by using our shared bundles feature. And we call that shared docs right here. That's the button that you use to initiate that. So let's say that these three items we wanted to share maybe a different way. And maybe the reason why we wanted to share it a different way is because we wanted to have a kind of record of it actually being viewed. So if I come in and I click on the share docs button, SkySlope's going to say go ahead and name your document bundle. We'll say sample. You can name it after the address or the street name or whatever you want to call it, right? Go ahead and click on create, and what SkySlope will do is generate a link for you. That link can be copied to your clipboard, just like that email address we looked at earlier. And let me come in here and actually log out of SkySlope completely. Because if you're already in SkySlope as a user, then it will record that information as though you were a SkySlope user. So let me paste that link into my browser here. Now, when the recipient of that link navigates to here, they're going to be prompted for 3 bits of information: their name, their email, and their phone number. They have to supply that information to proceed. So I can say Chris Carassi, C. Carassi at SkySlope, and 555, 123, 4567. All right. Now I can click on View the Documents, and I'm going to get some cool information, like your information, the address of the property, whatever. So whatever's in your personal profile on SkySlope will appear there. Along with the Taylor Properties logo, so very, very cool looking, right? And here's the list of all the documents. So I can go ahead and just look at this MLS printout, maybe it's a disclosure, maybe it's, I don't know, whatever it might be, right? I'm doing that. I can download these to my hard drive if I want. I can do whatever I want. Meanwhile, back on your end, as the agent, you can come back into the log now, and guess what? You have a record of that entire thing, of that entire procedure. So I can see that the document sample was created, but I can see that Chris Carassi at this particular time navigated that link, and I can even see at which time they viewed which documents. So, if you want to send something over to the title company and ensure that they're actually viewing them, that's a way to do it. If you want to send something to your counterpart agent and make sure that they actually reviewed the stuff that you sent them, this is the way to do it. If they say they didn't read it, you can say, no, Becky, you read it at 7:44 at night. I saw it. Whatever. So that's one way to kind of keep that. Questions about that?
Just, Mike, the logo for those with the Anne Arundel properties, they'll have an Anne Arundel properties logo?
No, I don't think there's any way we can do that.
Yeah, you pretty much get this logo.
It's going to confuse people.
I feel like there is like an API, you could put a logo up there, but I couldn't get it right past, so I'm hoping maybe we can in the future.
That would be a new one for me, if we can get multiple logos, but yeah, so right now it's just the
How about a
one
slash,
logo.
Would that go on
I've
all
seen
our
folks do
forms
that
we
where
send out?
they try to fit multiple logos into one logo.
I guess it's one of the things I can send out.
It would be?
Yeah, I'll just come up with something that comes to both of them.
last thing I wanted to show you real quick, canceled contracts. So when those files do get canceled, they come here. They're not gone out of SkySlope. Remember I mentioned nothing ever gets deleted. That includes these, but they are dead. I just noticed that the URL of that says dead deals. That's funny. Kind of sloppy, but okay. They're going to hang out here. If you need to, these can usually be reactivated, so don't worry about it. Any other questions? We wrapped up a little bit early for y'all, so yeah.
So this is pretty much a document management application. Are there other aspects to this, like analytics? A lot of information is going in there.
Yeah, so that stuff is to come. I think we're working on some of our APIs and stuff like that to allow for some of the manual processes here to be corrected, and so to automate some of that stuff. After that, we're looking at some reporting and things like that.
Yeah.
Your admins have access to a lot of reporting on their end.
Right.
Not very heavy on the analytics side, though, to be honest with you. So some of that stuff has to be done manually for right now. But there's a little bit of analytics on the broker side, but not much on the agent side.
Any kind of marketing aspect to it? Or?
Other than the capturing of that information in the contacts directory, not a lot. I mean, we're really trying to focus on making sure the broker stays compliant. That way you guys know kind of where your files are, and that way that communication and everything, that process is happening as efficiently as possible. Yes, sir, I think you're up next.
Is there a place we can work, like from sample stuff and be a total disaster and screw up, where Mike don't get inundated with, he doesn't see until we submit it, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a possibility. So if Mike's okay with it, we could set up like a test office for y'all.
Sandbox.
Well, you can basically just go create all the transactions and listings that you want, just don't add them to the checklist, and I'll never see them.
Yeah, that's another way to do it too. So as long as you're not turning anything into the checklist,
What
they
was
won't
that
be anywhere.
again? Don't add a checklist?
We in the office will not see anything you do on there until you add it to a checklist item. Once you do that, it pops up in our view, then we see it. So as long as you don't add it to a checklist item, you can do whatever you want with it, we'll never see it.
So just to make clear on that, so remember when I created this listing earlier, we had all those red required items. As long as they say red and required, no one will know about it, is what he's saying. So if you want to, you can do that. But we also may be able to create a sandbox environment for you, or you can create a separate account if we want to. I can talk to Mike about that.
Yeah, I like to go and
Just mess around, break stuff.
Yeah, fix it.
That's what I did. I think my first week, I found a way to break the platform. Like the users didn't see it, but on our end, we were like, whoa. So I agree with you. It's kind of fun. Yeah.
Any integration with CRMs or anything in the future?
So we are looking at, I think we have some integrations with some existing ones. I'm trying to think of them off the top of my head, and I'm failing right now. A lot of the ones that we do are more for back-end accounting integrations. I think probably the one that you're going to see become the most robust, I guess, is going to be with Sync. So just because Commissions Inc. and Fidelity, that's a kind of the same parent company, and so now we're probably going to be working more together. What, other questions? Yes, sir.
So I have a few listings and they're now under contract. Am I putting all of that information now into this, or you want me to finish up in?
You started them on the old site?
Yeah, so they're completed, the listing portion. Now I waited to submit the contracts.
You can do it either way. Anything started on the old site that is not closed out, you can still upload it there.
Okay.
Or if you want, you can put your contract on here, if it's easier for you to do. If you want to use a DigiSign, get more value, you can do it here. Either way is fine.
Yeah, they're all signed. I didn't know if I should put the listing and then do the whole process all over again.
Yeah, even if you wanted to do the contracts on SkySlope, you wouldn't have to put the listing in, since it's already on the old site.
Okay.
Yeah, just
Okay.
one place is fine.
Okay, that works.
Yes.
Is all of our correspondence through this going through our email, our personal email, when we send it to people?
Yes, so any email that gets sent out of SkySlope, that's actually something to mention, because I forgot to mention that. So when I send out an email from this area, right, I click on the email button. The actual email that your client will see, it says no reply at SkySlope, but if they actually respond to it, it will be sent to whatever email address is on your account. So in this case for Rob, it's this info at Heritage Financial area, but whatever's there, that will be where the emails get sent back to.
So how do you actually sign on to the account?
Great question.
I can't get in. It
So-
tells me that.
So what all of you can do is come into app.skyslope.com, enter in, or actually don't enter in anything, and click on the forgot password. So if you haven't logged into SkySlope yet at all, come in, click on the forgot password link, and then enter in whatever your email address is, it'll send you a link. You already have
And it doesn't. It says, please enter email ID.
Let me see.
Kelly, you don't know your email
No, I
ID?
don't know my email ID.
I don't really know what your email ID is.
I don't know.
So what happened? Did you enter it in, your email address?
Yeah, and then it
It'll
keeps
just keep
giving
saying
me that over and over.
Come
Does
see
it
me
send
after
you a
the show.
code?
No.
Come see me after the show.
Okay.
Anybody else, any weird login issues like that?
Yeah, I think we did yesterday, send a code to your email, and we entered that email, that code that was in the email in there, and then it lets you choose a new password.
Oh, that might be it too.
Maybe it's gone somewhere
Promise us
else.
a phone number.
That's right, phone
Right,
number,
that phone
most
number.
important thing.
Phone number.
Phone number?
Yes, the
Ah,
call.
the phone number, yes. Sorry, I was
I
like,
know it's on.
I'm like, you don't enter your phone number into the email flow, guys, only. But I misunderstood what you were saying. Let's see. Is it right here? There it is. I never actually have to look it up, so. Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for reminding me. I think I owe a couple more of you some information after this, but I think if there's no other questions.
Actually, one thing if I may real
Yes,
quick.
absolutely.
If you guys have any further questions or anything, feel free to contact me at any time. Best way by email, just mike@taylorprops.com. And of course, if it's something that SkySlope can easily answer, call them first, because that's what they're there for.
Yep.
But if it's something company related that you need to know about, it's not SkySlope
Yeah.
technically, then definitely let me know. I'm here to help you out any possible way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all so much. You guys are great, good questions, good attention. I know 2 hours is a long time to listen to anybody talk about anything. Well, me talk about SkySlope, so thank you. You can drive safe. If I owe you any information, come up. I'm not sure, so if you want to come up and say that, you can probably.
You can access everything that's on our company site is you can access at any time and always be there.
I can rain all day, straight, your hair straight. And mine
Yeah, that's also in the emails and everything I've been sending out.